1,000 hours. Miyako Strait, 300 feet below the surface. The Philippine Sea is a crushing void of absolute blackness. Pressure hulls groan almost imperceptibly against the weight of the deep. Inside the attack submarine, the air is recycled and stale, smelling of ozone and confined men. Crewmen sit motionless at their consoles, faces bathed in the soft green glow of sonar screens. The only sound is the rhythmic thrum of the cooling pumps and the beating of their own hearts. Above them, the surface is a restless sheet of obsidian, masking the deadly game of cat and mouse playing out in the deep. A sonar operator stiffens. He presses the headset tighter against his ears. A faint anomaly scratches across the waterfall display. It is not biological, it is metallic, rhythmic, closing fast. The captain leans over the shoulder of the operator. He sees the ghost trace solidify into a hard contact. The enemy is not searching anymore, they are locking on. The captain shouts the order. Tube 1 floods. The submarine shudders as the heavy weapon ejects into the black water. Compressed air screams. The wire-guided torpedo ignites, its propeller cavitation tearing through the silence. It accelerates to 50 knots. Across the strait, the enemy hunter-killer detects the launch. It breaks its stealth turn. Too late. The torpedo acquires the target. It slams into the pressure hull just aft of the sail. The explosion is catastrophic. The double hull rips apart like wet cardboard. A shockwave hammers the ocean floor. Inside the enemy sub, the lights die instantly. Emergency red lighting flickers on. Water jets in at supersonic speeds, decapitating piping and smashing bulkheads. Sailors are hurled against steel frames. The vessel tilts violently downward. Equipment racks tear loose, crushing operators beneath tons of electronics. The scream of twisting metal drowns out the shouts of the dying. On the surface, a frigate detects the underwater detonation. It slews its bow sonar into the wind. Active pings hammer the water, the sea erupts. The frigate launches anti-submarine rockets. They arc through the night sky, trailing fire. The rockets splash down in a tight pattern. Depth charges sink, timed for the crushed depth. The ocean heaves as underwater blasts lift the surface like a boiling cauldron. White water sprays hundreds of feet into the air. The captain of the firing sub orders a hard dive. He calls for a knuckle in the water, a decoy maneuver to fool the incoming torpedoes. The helm responds. The boat angles steep, diving toward the safety of the trench. Decoy canisters eject, sizzling and popping to create a wall of noise. The enemy response is swift. 2 heavyweight torpedoes drop from the patrolling frigate above. They spiral downward, seeking the acoustic signature of the aggressor. The first enemy torpedo passes close. Its screw churns the water just yards from the rudder. The turbulence shakes the submarine, rivets pop. A steam line bursts in the engine room, scalding the air. Mechanics scramble to isolate the leak, wrapping heavy thermal blankets over the rupture. The second torpedo locks onto the decoy. It detonates harmlessly against the canyon wall, sending a landslide of silt and rock tumbling into the abyss. The immediate threat passes. The submarine levels out at 600 feet. Silence returns, heavier than before. On the surface, an oil slick spreads across the waves, glistening under the moonlight. Debris bobs in the swell. Thermal lagging, shattered life preservers, documents. The first kill of the war is confirmed. The strait is no longer a shipping lane. It is a graveyard. 600 hours. Forward Airbase, Okinawa. The sun bleeds over the horizon, painting the runway in angry shades of orange and violet. Heat haze shimmers off the tarmac as ground crews scramble around the waiting aircraft. Fuel trucks pump volatile jet fuel into hungry tanks. Canopy glass reflects the morning light. Pilots sit strapped in, visors down, checking instrument panels with gloved hands. The air vibrates with the low whine of auxiliary power units. It is the calm before the storm. The base siren wails. It cuts through the heavy humidity. The tower radio barks a single code word. Engines ignite with a deafening roar. Afterburners light up, spitting blue and yellow flame against the concrete. The lead fighter jet screams down the runway. Tires leave the ground. It climbs vertically, punching through the low cloud layer. A wingman follows tight on the starboard side. Radar screens light up with a cluster of red contacts. 50 miles out, incoming heavy bombers escorted by attack jets. The flight leader locks a target. He squeezes the trigger on the stick. A long-range air-to-air missile drops from the pylon, ignites, and streaks away at Mach 4. The white smoke trail splits the blue sky. On the horizon, a flash. The lead bomber takes the hit on the port wing. The engine explodes. The massive aircraft rolls violently, shedding metal skin like confetti. It spirals uncontrollably toward the ocean. Enemy fighters peel off to engage. They dive from the sun. Tracers rip past the cockpit canopy. The flight leader brakes hard right, pulling 9 Gs. His G-suit inflates, squeezing his legs to keep blood in his brain. The airframe groans under the stress. He deploys flares. Burning magnesium decoys flower behind him. An enemy heat-seeking missile swerves, chasing the heat source. It detonates harmlessly in the clouds, shaking the jet with the turbulence. The wingman cuts across the circle. He lines up a snapshot. Cannon fire erupts from the nose of his jet. Rounds tear into the enemy fuselage. The canopy shatters. The enemy pilot ejects. The rocket seat shoots him clear just as the plane disintegrates into a fireball. Debris rains down on the chopping waves below. The surviving bombers open their bay doors. They release a volley of cruise missiles before turning back. The weapons drop, their small engines ignite, and they drop to skim the waves. They race toward the island radar arrays, disappearing into the sea clutter. The sky remains a chaotic tapestry of twisting smoke trails and drifting parachutes. The air war has begun. 600 hours, forward airbase Okinawa. The sun bleeds over the horizon, painting the runway in angry shades of orange and violet. Heat haze shimmers off the tarmac as ground crews scramble around the waiting aircraft. Fuel trucks pump volatile jet fuel into hungry tanks. Canopy glass reflects the morning light. Pilots sit strapped in, visors down, checking instrument panels with gloved hands. The air vibrates with the low whine of auxiliary power units. It is the calm before the storm. The base siren wails. It cuts through the heavy humidity. The tower radio barks a single code word. Engines ignite with a deafening roar. Afterburners light up, spitting blue and yellow flame against the concrete. The lead fighter jet screams down the runway. Tires leave the ground. It climbs vertically, punching through the low cloud layer. A wingman follows tight on the starboard side. Radar screens light up with a cluster of red contacts. 50 miles out. Incoming heavy bombers escorted by attack jets. The flight leader locks a target. He squeezes the trigger on the stick. A long-range air-to-air missile drops from the pylon, ignites, and streaks away at Mach 4. The white smoke trail splits the blue sky. On the horizon, a flash. The lead bomber takes the hit on the port wing. The engine explodes. The massive aircraft rolls violently, shedding metal skin like confetti. It spirals uncontrollably toward the ocean. Enemy fighters peel off to engage. They dive from the sun. Tracers rip past the cockpit canopy. The flight leader brakes hard right, pulling 9 Gs. His G-suit inflates, squeezing his legs to keep blood in his brain. The airframe groans under the stress. He deploys flares. Burning magnesium decoys flower behind him. An enemy heat-seeking missile swerves, chasing the heat source. It detonates harmlessly in the clouds, shaking the jet with the turbulence. The wingman cuts across the circle. He lines up a snapshot. Cannon fire erupts from the nose of his jet. Rounds tear into the enemy fuselage. The canopy shatters. The enemy pilot ejects. The rocket seat shoots him clear just as the plane disintegrates into a fireball. Debris rains down on the chopping waves below. The surviving bombers open their bay doors. They release a volley of cruise missiles before turning back. The weapons drop, their small engines ignite, and they drop to skim the waves. They race toward the island radar arrays, disappearing into the sea clutter. The sky remains a chaotic tapestry of twisting smoke trails and drifting parachutes. The air war has begun. 1300 hours, open ocean, Miyako Strait. The midday sun hammers down on the gray steel of the task force. The sea is a choppy expanse of whitecaps and deep blue troughs. A destroyer cuts through the swell, spray crashing over its bow. Radar dishes spin frantically atop the superstructure. Sailors on the bridge grip the handrails. The air conditioning hums, fighting the tropical heat, but sweat stains the uniforms of the crew. The horizon is hazy, blurring the line between sea and sky. A warning klaxon blares. The electronic warfare officer screams a bearing. Multiple sea-skimming missiles appear on the tactical display. They are closing at Mach 2. The destroyer's vertical launch cells blow open. Hatches fly off. Defensive interceptor missiles shoot upward on pillars of white smoke. They arc over the ship and dive toward the incoming threat. The horizon flashes. 3 enemy missiles detonate in midair, intercepted miles out. Debris rains harmlessly into the ocean, but 1 missile survives. It weaves through the defensive screen, hugging the wave tops. The ship's close-in weapon system, CIWS, spins up. The rotary cannon emits a deafening buzzsaw roar. Tungsten rounds stream out like a solid bar of fire. They walk onto the incoming missile. The missile explodes 50 yards off the port beam. Shrapnel sprays the hull like buckshot. The shockwave rocks the 8,000-ton vessel. Glass shatters on the bridge. A lookout is thrown against the bulkhead. The captain shouts orders to damage control. He demands full power to the engines. The ship leans hard into a tactical turn, bringing its main 5-inch gun to bear on the enemy fleet emerging from the haze. The main gun fires, the recoil shakes the deck. A spent shell casing the size of a trash can clatters onto the steel plating. Miles away, an enemy frigate takes the round. The high-explosive shell punches through the forward plating. It detonates inside the anchor chain locker. The bow of the frigate bulges outward. Steel rips open. Smoke pours from the jagged hole. The enemy returns fire. A heavy shell slams into the destroyer's helicopter hangar. The blast doors buckle. Aviation fuel ignites. A fireball consumes the aft deck. The fire suppression system activates, spraying foam over the burning wreckage. Sailors in flash gear rush into the inferno, dragging fire hoses. The captain orders a counter salvo. Harpoon anti-ship missiles launch from their canisters. They drop, ignite, and streak away. The enemy frigate turns to unmask its batteries, but it is sluggish. The harpoon strikes amidships, just above the waterline. The warhead penetrates deep into the engineering section before exploding. The blast lifts the frigate out of the water. The keel snaps. The ship breaks its back. The bow and stern fold upward. A massive column of black smoke rises, choking the sky. Secondary explosions rip through the hull as ammunition magazines cook off. Sailors jump from the burning rails into the oil-slicked water. The ocean churns with debris. The destroyer pushes through the smoke, its guns still firing, hunting for the next target. 1900 hours, Miyako Island, eastern shoreline. Twilight descends rapidly. The sky turns a bruised purple over the Pacific. The surf pounds against the coral reef, masking the grinding noise of approaching engines. Inside the camouflaged bunkers along the tree line, infantrymen peer through thermal sights. The sand is cool, but the air remains sticky and thick. Palm fronds rustle in the onshore breeze. A single flare pops overhead, hanging in the sky, bathing the beach in a flickering, ghostly white light. The water churns. Massive boxy shapes emerge from the surf. Amphibious assault vehicles rise from the waves, water cascading off their sloping armor. Their tracks bite into the wet sand. They lurch forward, engines roaring. The bunker line erupts. Heavy machine guns open fire simultaneously. Tracers stitch the darkness, forming a solid wall of red light. The lead amphibious vehicle takes a direct hit from an anti-tank rocket. The warhead punches through the front glacis. The vehicle detonates from the inside. The turret flies 30 feet into the air, trailing smoke. The hull burns fiercely, illuminating the incoming wave. Ramps drop on the surviving vehicles. Enemy infantry pour out, sprinting for the cover of the dunes. They dive into the sand. Bullets kick up geysers of dirt around them. A mortar round whistles in. It slams into a cluster of soldiers. The explosion throws 3 men backward like rag dolls. Shrapnel shreds the vegetation. A soldier crawls forward, dragging a wounded comrade by the vest. Blood stains the white sand, black in the dim light. An enemy rocket team sets up behind a burning wreck. They fire. The rocket streaks across the beach and strikes the command bunker. Concrete splinters. Dust fills the firing slit. The machine gun inside goes silent. Enemy troops surge forward, shouting, firing assault rifles from the hip. The platoon commander in the adjacent bunker grabs the handset. He screams coordinates into the radio, calling for final protective fire. He slams the receiver down and racks the slide of his rifle. He leans out the firing port, suppressing the advancing infantry. He orders his grenadiers to target the waterline. Artillery shells begin to fall. They walk the barrage down the beach, dangerously close to the friendly line. The concussions shake the ground. The beach becomes a kill zone. Fire and sand mix in a chaotic swirl. The enemy advance stalls. Soldiers flatten themselves against the earth, covering their heads as shrapnel buzzes overhead like angry hornets. The shelling stops. Silence rushes back, broken only by the crackle of burning diesel and the groans of the wounded. 5 burning armored vehicles litter the shoreline. The waves lapping at the beach are dark with oil and blood. The first wave is broken. 200 hours. High-altitude ridge, central Miyako Island. Heavy rain lashes the jungle canopy. The wind howls, masking the rhythmic thrum of approaching rotors. On the ridgeline, a massive anti-air radar dish rotates silently, sweeping the stormy sky. Red warning lights blink on the perimeter fence. Inside the guard shack, 2 enemy sentries huddle over a small heater, rifles leaning against the wall. The darkness is absolute. broken only by the jagged flash of distant lightning. The transport helicopters materialize out of the storm. They hover 50 feet above the clearing, black shapes against a black sky. Ropes uncoil and drop. Gloved hands grip the nylon. Special operations soldiers slide down, boots hitting the mud with a wet thud. They detach from the lines and fan out. Their night vision goggles turn the world into a grainy green phosphor tunnel. Laser sights slice through the rain. The team moves to the fence. Bolt cutters snap through the wire. The point man creeps toward the guard shack. He raises his suppressed carbine. Two soft coughs break the silence. The glass window shatters. The sentries crumple to the floor before they can reach their weapons. The team stacks up on the heavy steel door of the bunker complex. The breacher applies a strip of explosive tape to the frame. He squeezes the detonator. The blast blows the door inward, twisting the hinges. Smoke fills the entryway. A flashbang grenade arcs into the room. It detonates with a blinding white strobe and a deafening crack. The operators flow into the room. Clear left, clear right. Inside, confused technicians scramble from their consoles. One pulls a pistol from a holster. The lead operator fires a double tap. The technician jerks backward, falling over a chair. Rounds spark off the server racks. Another enemy soldier lunges from a side corridor, firing blindly with an assault rifle. Bullets chip the concrete walls, filling the air with dust and pulverized cement. An operator returns fire. The rounds catch the soldier in the chest plate. He drops. The team moves with surgical violence, sweeping the command center. They secure the room. The team leader pulls a thermite grenade from his vest. He pulls the pin and places it on the main radar control console. The chemical fire ignites, burning at 4,000 degrees. It melts through the steel casing, destroying the delicate electronics inside into a bubbling slag. Objective destroyed. Move. The team exits the bunker, sprinting back into the rain. Behind them, the radar dish grinds to a halt. The control room glows orange as the fire spreads. The anti-air battery is blind. 0900 hours, Philippine Sea. The flight deck of the supercarrier is a sweltering expanse of non-skid steel and steam. Catapult tracks smoke. Yellow-shirted handlers sprint between fully loaded fighter jets, signaling with frantic hand gestures. The roar of engines at full military power vibrates through the hull, shaking the coffee and mugs down in the mess hall. The sun beats down, reflecting off the white missiles slung under wings. The shooter drops to one knee and points forward. The catapult fires, the steam piston slams forward. The lead fighter jet is hurled down the track. It accelerates from 0 to 160 miles per hour in 2 seconds. The landing gear leaves the deck. The jet drops slightly toward the water before the pilot pulls back on the stick. The afterburners kick in, pushing the aircraft into a vertical climb. Another jet taxis into position immediately. The rhythm is relentless. High above, the strike package forms up. 20 aircraft turn in unison toward the enemy fleet. They drop their external fuel tanks. The aluminum canisters tumble into the sea. The pilots arm their weapons. They release a swarm of long-range anti-ship missiles. The weapons ignite, dropping to skim the waves, speeding toward the horizon like a pack of wolves. The enemy responds. On the carrier's bridge, the tactical officer screams a warning. Vampire, vampire, inbound. The ocean around the carrier group erupts. Enemy missiles break the horizon. The escorting destroyers unleash a wall of lead and fire. Vertical launch cells ripple fire interceptors. The sky fills with smoke trails. One enemy missile weaves through the chaff clouds. It targets a destroyer screening the carrier's starboard flank. The ship's rotary cannon spins up, spitting tungsten. It hits the missile, but the momentum carries the wreckage forward. The warhead detonates 20 feet from the bridge wing. The explosion shreds the destroyer's superstructure. Radar arrays topple into the sea. Shrapnel scythes across the open deck, cutting down a damage control team. Black smoke pours from the wound in the ship's side. The vessel lists heavily, steering locked. Meanwhile, the carrier strike finds its mark. Miles away, the enemy cruisers activate their defenses. It is not enough. The swarm overwhelms them. A missile strikes the enemy flagship. It punches through the main deck and explodes in the ammunition magazine. The ship lifts bodily out of the water. A sphere of fire expands, consuming the vessel. The shockwave flattens the waves for half a mile. The steel hull disintegrates. Massive sections of plating spin through the air. The superstructure collapses into the inferno. Sailors are blown off the deck, their bodies ragdolling into the burning oil slick below. The flagship breaks in two and slides beneath the surface, dragging the screaming crew down with it. 1600 hours, Interior Jungle Valley, Miyako Island. The afternoon sun struggles to penetrate the triple canopy rainforest. Steam rises from the rotting vegetation. A narrow, muddy track snakes through the valley floor. The ground vibrates rhythmically. An enemy armored column pushes inland. Heavy battle tanks crush the soft earth, their tracks churning the mud into a brown paste. Diesel engines roar, echoing off the canyon walls. Infantry soldiers ride on the rear decks of the tanks, gripping the bustle racks, scanning the dense green wall of trees. A sudden gust of wind whips the treetops. Leaves swirl violently. The tank commander in the lead vehicle looks up. The rhythmic thumping becomes a roar. Two attack helicopters pop up from behind the limestone ridge. They hang in the air, nose down, aggressive. The weapons officer in the lead bird squeezes the trigger. A heavy anti-tank missile drops from the rail. It ignites. The rocket motor screams. The missile covers the distance in a heartbeat. It slams into the turret ring of the lead battle tank. The shaped charge detonates. A jet of molten copper punches through the steel. The tank's ammunition supply ignites instantly. The 40-ton turret is blown 10 feet into the air, spinning like a top before crashing down into the jungle. The column halts in panic. The rear tank tries to reverse. It backs into an armored personnel carrier, crushing the front grille. Metal screams against metal. The convoy is trapped. The helicopters unleash their rocket pods. Dozens of unguided rockets streak forward, leaving trails of gray smoke. They saturate the road. Explosions rip through the soft-skinned supply trucks in the center of the column. Fireballs erupt, consuming the canvas covers. Soldiers jump from the burning trucks. They scramble into the tree line. The chain gun under the lead helicopter's nose spins up. It barks a slow, rhythmic death sentence. Thump, thump, thump. 30mm high explosive rounds tear through the canopy. Trees the size of telephone poles are sawed in half, crashing down onto the road. The rounds impact the ground, exploding in showers of dirt and shrapnel. Enemy infantry are cut down in mid-stride. Bodies are thrown against the tree trunks. One round strikes the engine deck of the trapped personnel carrier. The armor splinters, the engine block cracks, oil sprays out and ignites. An enemy soldier raises a shoulder-fired missile launcher. He aims through the smoke. The helicopter pilot spots the flash. He banks hard left. Flares! Flares! Magnesium decoys pop from the aircraft's tail. The missile swerves, chasing the heat. It detonates harmlessly in the high branches, raining shredded leaves onto the battlefield. The helicopters dip their noses and accelerate away, disappearing behind the ridge as quickly as they appeared. Below, the valley is a choke point of destruction. Burning hulks block the road. Black smoke rises straight up, marking the location for the bombers high above. The advance is halted. 2200 hours. Command ship Miyako Strait. The bridge is bathed in the crimson glow of night operations lighting. Outside, the night is pitch black. Rain sheets against the reinforced glass, distorting the few navigation lights visible in the distance. Radar operators stare at the rhythmic sweep of the green lines. The silence is broken only by the hum of server cooling fans and low voices exchanging course corrections. The fleet holds a tight formation in the dark. The primary air search radar flickers, then it blooms. The screen does not show a single target. It shows a solid wall of white static. The operator toggles the gain controls. The static remains. It is not a glitch. The tactical officer shouts, "Contact, massive saturation, bearing 090. A buzzing sound rises above the wind. It sounds like a hive of millions of angry hornets. The swarm emerges from the rain. Hundreds of suicide drones. They are small, delta-winged shapes, barely visible against the storm. They dive. The ship's rotary cannons spin up automatically. They fire into the cloud. Tracers tear through the plastic bodies of the lead drones. Debris rains down on the deck, but there are too many to track. The targeting computers screech, overwhelmed by the sheer number of targets. A drone slams into the main communication mast. It detonates. Shrapnel shreds the satellite domes and radio antennas. The bridge screens flash blue, then go black. Sparks shower from the overhead console. The radio goes dead. Another drone hits the bridge window. The explosion cracks the reinforced glass. The blast wave throws the helmsman over the wheel. He crashes into the navigation table. Smoke fills the compartment. The captain grabs the railing to stay upright. "All systems offline, we are blind," a sailor screams. Without radar, the fleet formation collapses. A nearby frigate loses its spatial awareness. It turns hard to starboard to evade the swarm. It crosses the path of a massive supply ship. The collision is deafening. The frigate's bow slices into the supply ship's hull like a chisel. Steel screams. The impact throws the supply ship onto its side. Containers slide off the deck, crashing into the turbulent water. Fuel lines rupture. A spark from the grinding metal ignites the vapor. A fireball erupts between the two locked ships, lighting up the chaotic scene. The captain on the command ship grabs a handheld analog radio. He runs to the bridge wing. He fires a flare gun into the air. Emergency breakaway, all ships disperse. The drone swarm circles for a second pass, buzzing like a mechanical plague. The fleet is scattered. Ships veer wildly, their sensors dark, their crews fighting fires in the rain. The coordinated task force is now a collection of isolated, blinded targets. 500 hours, Miyako Strait Trench, 200 feet deep. The ocean is heavier here. The weight of the water presses against the steel hull with 3 million pounds of force. Inside the damaged attack submarine, the silence is terrifying. The air is cold and damp. Condensation drips from the overhead pipes, landing on the neck of the sonar operator. A small high-pressure leak in the aft compartment hisses like a viper, misting the air with salt water. The crew moves in socks, stepping softly on the rubber deck matting. Every sound is a death sentence. The sonar operator raises a finger. His eyes widen, transient, bearing 210, close. The enemy hunter-killer is directly above them. It is searching. The ping of active sonar hits the hull. It sounds like a hammer striking an anvil. Clang! The crew flinches. The sound reverberates through the steel bones of the ship. They are found. The captain grips the periscope stand. His face is gray with fatigue. He whispers the order, dive, make depth 1800. The plainsman hesitates. 1,800 feet is test depth. The hull is already compromised. The captain nods sternly. The yoke is pushed forward. The submarine tilts nose down. It slides into the abyss. The hull groans. Ribs pop and ping as the metal compresses. The depth gauge spins. 400 feet, 500 feet. The leak in the aft compartment screams louder. A bolt shears off a flange and shoots across the room like a bullet, embedding itself in the bulkhead. Above them, the enemy sub dives to pursue. It fires a torpedo. The screw noise screams through the water. Counterfire, tubes 1 and 2, snapshot, the captain orders. The weapons officer punches the launch key. Compressed air blasts the torpedoes out. They streak upward, wire-guided, seeking the enemy's screw noise. The enemy torpedo closes in. The captain orders a hard turn. Emergency blow, all main ballast tanks. High-pressure air roars into the ballast tanks. The submarine shudders violently. It kicks its nose up, rising like a rocket. The enemy torpedo passes underneath, missing by feet. It loses its lock in the turbulent wake. But the enemy sub is not so lucky. It is diving too fast to evade the counterfire. The first torpedo impacts the bow. The explosion is muted by the depth, a dull, crushing thud. The damage is instantly fatal at this depth. The enemy pressure hull fails. It does not tear, it shatters. The ocean rushes in at supersonic speed. The air inside the submarine is compressed from 1 atmosphere to 60 in a fraction of a second. The heat of compression incinerates the air. The vessel implodes. The sound is horrific, a sharp, violent crack that travels for miles. Then silence. On the surviving submarine, the sonar screen washes out with the noise of the implosion, then clears. The contact is gone. Debris rains down on their hull. Pieces of steel, shattered piping sinking into the trench below. The captain exhales. He leans against the console, wiping sweat from his eyes. The depth gauge reads 1,750 feet. They are alive. 1,100 hours. Miyako Strait, Northern Channel. The sun is a pale, sickly disk behind a curtain of oily black smoke. The sea is no longer blue. It is a sludge of gray ash and floating debris. The surviving Allied surface vessels form a rigid line across the narrowest point of the strait. They sit low in the water, listing, scarred by scorch marks and shrapnel impact craters. Crews stand at battle stations, eyes red from fatigue and smoke, watching the northern horizon. The silence is heavy, broken only by the crackle of fires on drifting hulks. The radar officer on the lead destroyer speaks. Contact, high speed, range 4 miles. The gray wall of haze breaks. The enemy reinforcement fleet emerges. They are not maneuvering, they are charging. A massive cruiser leads the wedge, flanked by fast attack craft. They accelerate, their bow waves foaming white against the dark water. They intend to ram through the blockade. The Allied commander gives the order. Free fire, hold the line. The destroyer's main gun erupts. The 5-inch shell traverses the short distance in seconds. It slams into the enemy cruiser's bow. The explosion shreds the anchor chains and peels the plating back like a banana skin. The cruiser does not slow down. Its forward batteries swivel and return fire. A high explosive shell strikes the destroyer's bridge wing. The blast blows out the starboard windows. Shrapnel tears through the command center. The helm console sparks and dies. The ship yaws to the left, exposing its flank. An enemy attack craft surges forward, seizing the opening. It launches a torpedo at point-blank range. The weapon hits the water and arms instantly. It strikes the destroyer amidships. A geyser of water shoots 200 feet into the air. The ship breaks. The stern section lifts, the propellers still spinning in the air before crashing back down. A damaged Allied frigate maneuvers to fill the gap. It lacks missiles. The captain orders a collision course. The frigate accelerates toward the incoming enemy transport ship. The engines scream redline. The enemy tries to turn, but the gap is too narrow. The frigate slams into the transport's midsection. The sound of the impact is deafening, a screech of tearing steel that drowns out the gunfire. The frigate's bow acts like a chisel, cutting deep into the transport's cargo hold. The momentum drives the transport sideways. Cargo containers topple from the deck, crushing the smaller boats below. The two ships lock together, grinding and twisting. Sailors on the frigate's deck fire small arms at the enemy crew on the transport. It is a brawl. A heavy machine gun rakes the transport's bridge, shattering the glass. The channel becomes a parking lot of burning steel. The enemy cruiser, blocked by the collision, reverses hard. It is trapped. Allied shore batteries on the nearby island open fire. Artillery shells rain down on the stalled fleet. The water boils with explosions. The enemy advance falters. The wreckage of the transport sinks, blocking the path completely. The line holds. 1,500 hours, 20,000 feet above Miyako Strait. The sky is a chaotic tangle of white contrails and drifting black smoke. The sun glares off the ocean surface, now littered with the burning carcasses of the naval battle below. Inside the cockpits of the remaining fighter jets, low-fuel warning lights blink amber. Oxygen regulators click rhythmically. The pilots are drenched in sweat, their flight suits heavy and uncomfortable. The airframes rattle, stressed to their structural limits. There are no more long-range missiles. The battle has devolved into a visual range brawl, a knife fight in a phone booth. The two squadrons merge. It is violent and immediate. Jets pass canopy to canopy at a combined closure rate of 1,000 miles per hour. The shockwave shakes the aircraft like ragdolls. A flight leader pulls his stick back into his stomach. The jet pitches up, standing on its tail. Gravity slams the pilot into his seat, draining the blood from his head. His vision tunnels to a gray pinpoint. He fights the G-lock, forcing air into his lungs. He kicks the rudder pedal. The jet slices over the top of the loop, nose dropping toward the ocean. An enemy fighter crosses his sights. He squeezes the trigger. The 20mm cannon roars, vibrating the entire fuselage. Tracers walk across the enemy jet's left wing. The aluminum skin shreds. The hydraulic line is severed. Vapor sprays out and ignites. The enemy wing shears off at the root. The aircraft snaps into a violent, uncontrollable roll. It disintegrates under the aerodynamic load. The cockpit section tumbles away, falling like a stone toward the clouds below. On the flank, a wingman is in trouble. An enemy bandit sits tight on his 6 o'clock position. The enemy pilot fires a burst. Rounds spark off the engine nozzle. The wingman banks hard left, dumping flare. The magnesium traps burn bright, but the enemy ignores them, staying locked for the gun kill. The wingman makes a desperate move. He chops the throttle to idle and deploys the air brake. The heavy metal slab rises from the fuselage. The jet decelerates instantly, shuddering as if hitting a brick wall. The enemy pilot reacts too late. He zooms past, overshooting the target. The situation reverses. The wingman slams the throttle to full afterburner. Fire spits from the exhaust. He pulls the nose up. The enemy is now in front. The wingman fires. The rounds smash into the enemy cockpit. The glass canopy shatters. The pilot slumps forward. The jet noses over slowly, entering a terminal dive. The radio crackles. Bingo fuel, disengage, disengage. The remaining enemy jets break formation. They dive toward the deck, turning north, fleeing the kill zone. They streak away, trailing thin lines of smoke. The Allied fighters do not pursue. They cannot. Their tanks are nearly dry. They bank slowly toward the south. The roar of engines fades, replaced by the wind rushing over the wings. The airspace is clear. 1,800 hours, Miyako Strait. The sun dips below the horizon. A blood-red disk choked by the funeral pyre of smoke that hangs over the water. The roar of combat is replaced by a haunting, rhythmic slapping of waves against hollow steel. The strait is a graveyard. Miles of ocean are covered in a thick, iridescent blanket of heavy fuel oil. Debris fields stretch as far as the eye can see. Shattered lifeboats, floating crates, jagged pieces of fuselage, and the charred bodies of sailors. The air tastes of salt, sulfur, and burned meat. A small rescue cutter pushes through the sludge, its engines idle low, the propellers slowly churning the thick water. On the bow, crewmen in hazmat suits scan the darkness with thermal monoculars. A searchlight snaps on. The beam cuts through the gloom, illuminating a cluster of survivors clinging to a piece of aircraft wing. The cutter pulls alongside. Nets drop over the side. The survivors are slick with black oil, their eyes white and wide in their darkened faces. They are too weak to climb. Rescue swimmers dive into the toxic water. They grab the wounded, dragging them toward the nets. A swimmer harnesses a pilot with a broken leg. The winch screams, hoisting the man onto the deck. He coughs up black fluid, collapsing on the steel grating. Nearby, the stern of a broken frigate protrudes from the water like a jagged tombstone. It groans as the internal bulkheads finally give way. Trapped air escapes with a mournful, high-pitched whistle. The steel hulk slips beneath the surface, dragging a vortex of water down with it. Bubbles boil to the surface, marking the final resting place of 200 men. A transport helicopter hovers low over a burning destroyer. The ship is listing 40 degrees, its fires casting long, dancing shadows across the water. The rotor wash fans the flames. A rescue basket lowers to the slanted deck. Stranded sailors scramble toward it, slipping on the firefighting foam. One man loads a wounded shipmate into the basket before waving the helicopter off. The cable retracts. The helicopter banks away, heading toward the hospital ship waiting in the rear echelon. On the horizon, the surviving warships limp southward. They are battered, smoking, and running on auxiliary power. Radar dishes are bent, gun barrels are warped, and hulls are patched with hastily welded steel plates. There is no victory parade. There is only the slow, painful procession of the survivors leaving the killing field. The radio on the rescue cutter crackles. Search Sector 4 complete, moving to Sector 5, no contacts found. The captain of the cutter looks out over the darkening sea. A single flare drifts down from a parachute in the distance, flickering out before it hits the water. The silence returns, absolute and heavy. The battle for the strait is over. The ocean claims its due.